This is the Raising Rebellion podcast, episode number 20.
Welcome to the Raising Rebellion Parenting Podcast, where we will explore how to help kids seek purpose and passion, challenge society's expectations, and avoid a standardized life. Now here's your host, Paul H.K.
Hello, Rebels. Thank you so much for being here. I'm Paul, your host. I've been thinking a lot this week about the future of our kids, as we had a new Secretary of Education confirmed here in the United States. Not to get too political or anything, but while most of us have little to no control over what is taught inside classrooms, we do have full control of what our kids can learn outside of the classroom through experiences. Today's guest, Kasia Slavner, had a lot of exposure to social issues when she was younger that had a tremendous impact on her and how she chooses to live her life today. I'm very inspired by Kasia and her mom, Marla. Kasia, who is now 18 years old, is a wonderful example of a young woman who found a couple of things she was passionate about and is using them to make positive impacts in the world, which, by the way, includes having her documentary that she shot and produced debuting at the United Nations this month. Great stories today. I hope you enjoy. Here now is my interview with Kasia and Marla Slavner. Today, I have the pleasure of speaking with filmmaker and global citizen, Kasia Slavner, and her equally incredible mom, Marla. Kasia and Marla, thank you both very much for being on the show today.
Thank you for having us. Thanks. It's a real pleasure.
Absolutely. The pleasure is mine. Okay, Kasia, let's start with you. If we could, tell me about your background, if you don't mind, starting with as you were growing up as a kid and a little bit about your journey to where you are today. All
right. Well, I'll start with the most, monumental event you could call it. Growing up, when I was about 8, my mom took me to see a founder of a local organization in Canada called Free the Children. They build schools abroad, and they work to inspire youth to take action. And she got tickets to go see the founder speak, and I was very inspired by the cause and the movement, and that's where my social justice journey began. So I started being more interested in learning more about global issues, and I would do my best to get informed and take action in my own community just by joining school clubs. And at the same time, I guess you could say I had a growing passion for photography as well, and this developed kind of separately, both on different paths, until I was about 13 or 14 when I had a little epiphany that these were my two main passions, and I wanted to figure out a way to combine them. And so let's see, what's next? At 14, around the same time that I had that epiphany, my mom took me to a youth peace camp with an organization here called the Canadian Voice of Women for Peace. So I went to the peace camp with other youth my age and adult mentors, and I was very inspired by that. And every year, they run a delegation down to a United Nations conference on gender equality. And so that hosts about 8,000 women and men from every part of the world who are all very driven and passionate to make a difference on that issue. And seeing these people in their communities really, really motivated me to combine those two passions even more. And so that's when I came up with the idea for my documentary film called The Sunrise Storyteller. And I had a crazy little idea, and I pitched it to my mom. I said, what if we took a year out of school so that I could share these stories? And she was definitely on board, but she was a little bit skeptical of how we'd get it done. And I guess that's my linear path of how we got to where we were now. So finding that spark down at the United Nations has inspired and informed all my work today. So whether it's photography or film or writing, I like to share stories that have a positive message to them that really motivate other people to take action as well.
That's pretty incredible. And there's a lot to unpack there.
Yeah, definitely.
From both of you. I have a lot of questions for both of you. But Kesha, tell me, so, age 8, right?
Yeah.
When I was 8, I'm playing with, Hot Wheel cars, and I'm not thinking anything about global issues or anything like that. That's not even on my radar, right? What kinds of things, and I'm sure it started at 8, but then, year after year, as you're getting more involved and you're becoming more aware and more interested in other things, I'm sure that it started to stir the curiosity up in you, as you continued along. But do you have any sort of specific examples of either, people or events or stories that you heard along the way that made the most impression on you to kind of move you into taking action in what you do in your own life?
Well, when I was younger, it was mainly that driving force of hearing about the founder of the organization, who he was originally inspired by a 12-year-old boy who was his age when he started the organization, named Iqbal Musi. And Iqbal was a child laborer at a carpet factory. And when he spoke out against child labor and for education, he was killed for doing so by the owners of the factory. And so that's what inspired Craig to make an organization that would focus on education and youth. Mm-hmm. And so hearing that story really shocked me at the same time as put me into action.
Right.
Right. And so he was 12 and I was 8 at the time. So I thought to myself that this kid wasn't too much older than I was. What's stopping me from making the world a better place? And I think that's the main story that I heard. And obviously over time that has changed, but that was the original inspiration.
Right. Gotcha. Now, Marla, when Kesha comes to you and says, I want to take a year off school, what do you think of this idea? What were the first thoughts that were going through your mind as she pitched that to you?
I was elated that she came up with this idea in the first place, but then as a mom, stepping back, going, as nice as that seems, I'm looking at my bank account and checkbook and thinking, nice. I've had dreams like that. And, I had dreams when I was a kid that I wanted to go travel, and my parents, they didn't have the money, and they like, no, it was just a no. And I remember that memory of, being denied, not out of, anything other than it simply wasn't possible. My parents had 4 children. My dad worked really hard. They were trying to, do what everyone out there is trying to do and raise a family, have a house and that. So, I was crushed at that. And I remember that feeling of being crushed. And when she told me this, I said, my inner dialogue was like, wow, this is great. Oh, I don't want to crush her, because I'm in the same position. I can't right now. Mm-hmm. And so rather than say no right away, I was like, okay, well, let's think about it. And, if it's meant to be, we'll find a way. And I wanted also to see if it was just a fast, passing fancy that she wanted, great idea, because let's face it, kids do have these ideas and then they lose steam on them. So right. I let it simmer there and see if she was still going to keep up, the ask. And, a couple months went by and she was still asking. And I remember very vividly on one particular trip, dropping her off at school in the car. We would do this thing. It's weird. We go under this railroad track right? You know, when you go under a railroad track, there's this thing, you put your hands on the roof, you make a wish, right?
Right.
It's like, okay, make a wish. And then after we passed the railroad track, I said, are you still serious about wanting to take a year off of school and do this? And she said, yes. I said, are you prepared to put in the amount of work that's going to take to do it and find a way to fundraise and all of that? Because we don't have the money and it's going to have to, you know, come from somewhere. And she said, absolutely. And I said, okay, we'll find a way. And we did. And then a few months after that, or actually, you know what, I think it was close to a year after, you know, Indiegogo campaigns that she had been running. And it was very touch and go. We didn't know if we were actually going to make it out the door. And she was doing this sugar scrub and selling it at fairs, craft markets, and raising money for local charities that way, and raising money to produce her line of cards. And so she had one of these shows coming up, and she needed a display box. And there was this wooden box in my office on a shelf that had been there for quite some time. And she's like, what about this? And I said, okay, well, help me move all this stuff on it and we'll get it out. And the strangest thing happened. We lifted the box, and underneath there was a clipping. And I used to do collage work, so I had all these newspaper clippings and magazine clippings. And for some reason, this one needed to be flattened, and it was under the box. And we moved the box, and there was this, you know, field of like flowers, and then it's the type on the clipping was on the right path, and it was bold letters. Mm-hmm. And we looked at each other, and we're like, okay, we've just been given the sign. We're not, you know, we're not going to miss. We just knew. We both looked at each other in that moment, and we're like, it was the energy we needed just as we were about to kind of give up on things and say, I don't know, this isn't happening. And it was there. And so it was like, okay, full force ahead from now.
The universe was telling you to keep going. I love it.
Yeah. And a funny thing on the back of this message was clipping, like, I don't know, like you see all those classified ads for travel deals. Yeah. So.
Wow. You know, a couple of things I love about that is that, you know, you didn't say no right away. And I totally agree with you that as a parent, you kind of want to see if it's something that your kid is still interested in, give it a little bit of time to settle and stew and see if it sticks. And when it did, you said, all right, let's figure out how to do it, rather than just the straight no. So I love that. Did either of you have anybody, like, did it ever enter your mind that, okay, well, how are others going to perceive what we're doing? Like, are they going to look at us and go, well, we shouldn't be doing this? You know, did you catch any flack for, you know, Marla, did you catch any flack for taking Kesh out of school for a year? Were people telling you don't do it, it's too dangerous? Did you catch any kind of feedback from anybody on that level?
Oh, sure. We had judgments. We actually had some resistance from people, serious doubt, you know, projections, all that, you know, all that comes with the territory of when you step out into something that's really not conventional, that's very unconventional. Right. And, you know, but the school was very accommodating. They were very supportive and found a way for Cash to work around her schedule and to obtain credits in an alternative way that we had never heard of before. So that for the year that she took off, she actually only had to make up a half a year of school instead of the full year, even though it would extend her, you know, school by half a year and not graduate with her friends. So that was a very positive experience.
That's great.
But you know, it did bring new people. I would say it brought a lot of new people into our lives that we had never, you know, met before, and that became part of our community, and in a very solid way, very beautiful way. And then others whose time to, stage left, exit. And, some did exit from the friendship, and that was because of their own, inability to probably recognize their own dreams. And, it comes down to, also some jealousies, but for the most part, people were supportive,
And Kesha, how about you? Tell me about the perspective from your point of view, like amongst your friends and your peers when you started telling them your plans and what you were going to go do.
At first, I think, at the very beginning when it was just an idea, people kind of didn't understand as much. Like, how are you going to do that? Like, how are you going to swing it? But once I began to take time off of school and started to work on things and the project gained momentum, people began to see what my vision was and what I was going to be doing and how I actually managed to take time out of school and work on this instead. And it's all been very supportive from there. My friends have been my greatest supports. And the people along the way that we've met, they've all just been really, I think, fascinated by the idea and motivated by it, I hope. And it's all been very positive, aside from the initial reaction of, oh my gosh, you're doing what and how
and where
and
yeah. And being really only, you were 14 turning 15 at the time that we announced it.
Right. I love how, this may have been going on for a long time and we just haven't heard about a lot of it. Maybe now because of social media, we hear a lot more about what kids and young people are doing in terms of putting good stuff out into the world. But to me, it seems like it's getting younger and younger and younger with people that are becoming active and proactive and doing good things for their communities, for other human beings, for the environment, for the world. All this great stuff is being put out there. So I love it. I love that you're a part of it. I want to get to the details about your movie in just a little bit, but I want to ask you some other questions first. It seems like you're involved in a lot of different organizations, and you have been, right? Such as I was reading your bio, and organizations such as the Me to We movement. You're a contributor to several publications, including National Geographic and Good Magazine, Huffington Post. You do public speaking, and you're 18 now. Is that right? Are you 18 years old?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm turning 19 soon, though.
Okay, well.
He's older, don't they?
No, I'm not.
Okay, well, you've packed more into your life than I have in my 40 plus. So that's all I'm saying. You could, as a teenager, you could easily be spending your time doing other things, right? I mean, I'm going to say most teens are not doing what you choose to spend your time on. Why do you think you choose to spend your time doing the kinds of things that you do?
It's just my passion. I've always wanted to make the world a better place, and I think that if you're not doing something, then you're just not doing something to make the world a better place. Mm-hmm. It's just you have to not only dream of a better world, but you have to do. And I think that whether that's, I don't know, making a film or coming up with some sort of environmental cure, or even participating in protests or going to a food bank, I think that if you're doing your part in some way, then that makes all the difference. And I just want to do my part.
I love it. Now, Marla, can you tell me a little bit about Kesha as a kid and as she was growing up?
Oh, okay. So at 2 years old, she looked up as I was putting her down to bed, and she's like, "Mom, imagine to be 2." And I was like, my head went for, full circle twist, right? It's like, who's inside that body? Very philosophical. And I'm like, where did this come from? And it wasn't like she was just drifting off and she's like this. So I kind of was shocked into the fact that this kid is kind of a sentient being and I may want to keep an eye on this. And very creative, right? And very socially concerned. We also, had our own struggles, and I left, her father when she was 3. And so it's just been us. And she's been exposed to conversations. In different circles with wise women and, indigenous teachings. And, so there was a basis where she's going to absorb a lot of this. But I watched it in her own creativity come out and her curiosity about the world. And so she was joyful, I would say, a very joyful child, and precocious, energetic. She was a breech baby, and we had tried to do the inversion,
Mm-hmm.
thing, and that was very difficult. And and I remember we had different healers, try to move her. And there was this one woman from the Wichkol tribe, an indigenous medicine woman whose energy was fire. And, she had gotten her almost into position, and then she basically took her hands off, and Kasha went spinning back in the opposite direction of being the opposite, kind of a rebel, right?
Mm-hmm.
A rebel. And the fire said to me in Spanish, which I happen to know, she's like, no tenga miedo, tiene mucha fuega. So that means don't be afraid. This kid has a lot of fire.
So exhibiting rebel qualities in the womb, right? Okay, yeah. It's all making a lot more sense now. Okay, now Marla, let me talk about your background for a little bit. I'm always really interested and curious about where people who are driven to do these kinds of things and make these kinds of choices for their own lives. Like, I'm always trying to ask questions about, where this stuff comes from. So, Marla, your bio, after reading your bio, you are a hyphenate, as they might say here in the land of Hollywood. Your background consists of a lot of different things. You're a social entrepreneur, you're a writer, a media consultant, social justice advocate, a trained peace-building facilitator. You speak 5 languages. You're a part-time comedian. Kasha, is your mother funny? Is my next question.
She can be, definitely.
Okay. Have you ever seen her perform?
I haven't seen her perform, but I helped her memorize her performance. Which is basically the same as seeing her perform 50 times over.
Okay. Very cool. Now, Marla, tell me a little bit about a couple of those. What is a social justice advocate, and what is a trained peace-building facilitator? Tell me a little bit about those two.
Well, similarly, a social justice advocate is somebody who takes up the cause of whatever they're concerned about. So
right.
I want to see social justice. I want to see equity. I want to see environmental justice, gender justice. So if you think of justice and equality, then you can, it's a good framework for social justice. It's social meaning civic,
Yep.
civic society. The peace building facilitation that I did was with youth coming out of the criminal or about to enter the criminal justice system who had been arrested. And it's a circle process where it's like a talking circle, and it helps. It's very similar to restorative justice circles where the objective is to get accountability on behalf of the person who's perpetrated the crime, and then find a way to heal that and to bring about some to bring about a alternative sentencing that would divert them from the courts. Mm-hmm. And I'm very invested in youth, and so it's a really empowering type of facilitation. It's not hierarchical, as the current justice system is, that punishes. But this seeks to, establish healing and restoration.
That's great.
And it can be used within that setting, or it can be used one-on-one with personal relationships, family dynamics, communities, corporate settings. It's a peaceful conflict resolution tool.
I love that. I love it. I'm going to have to do a little bit of research, a little bit more research into that. That's fascinating. Now, I'm a big believer in experiences guiding our lives, especially when we're young, right? So therefore, I am a big advocate on this podcast of, exposing your kids to as many different experiences as possible. When Kesha was young, Marla, was there intent on exposing her to just a lot of the different things that you were already interested in and becoming interested in, in the hopes of raising this kind of young woman? Or was it just sort of you brought her along, with you to a lot of these events and, just to kind of provide her the perspective?
Yeah, twofold. One, being a single parent, and not having a lot of resources to hire sitters and go out, and also not a firm believer of leaving, and having, somebody else watch my kid all the time. So, I mean, I do believe in balance and getting out, definitely. But, with regards to logistics, it just made sense. Bring her along. And you know what? Let's make space, kid-friendly space. So she would be in a lot of adult settings around, again, a lot of conversations, a lot of arts-oriented, things, town hall meetings, you name it, right? She's there. And so were other parents. I think I took you to the Scotiabank Nuit Blanche, Years ago, this all-night art festival in Toronto started, and in the very early days, I think I was one of the few parents out there with her, because it would go all night. And it would be 1 a.m, but the exposure to art and culture, and like the city's never seen before, and she loved it. And as it's grown, this festival now has become a family-friendly place. Like, everybody is out there to all hours of the night with their children. So you've got to start somewhere, right? To let other parents know it's okay to bring your kids along. So I did. And I didn't do it specifically, first off to say, well, this is the kind of child. I mean, I knew by the fact that I was a conscious parent, and socially responsible, that some of it was going to download at some point. Right? Yep. I mean, maybe a little bit too much when she really wanted the Barbie boots, and I wanted to write in the Barbie boots that I may walk in Barbie's boots, but I'm not following in her footsteps. She's like, I maybe pulled back on doing that one, right?
You didn't pull back on doing that one.
Okay, maybe I didn't pull back on doing that one.
Did that one.
I did that one. Maybe I didn't do all of them. Right. Yeah. I grew up in the 60s, so that should explain it. I wasn't an activist in the 60s. I was a wannabe activist because I was 3-4 years old, just as she was that age, hanging out with me. I grew up on JFK and Martin Luther King and Malcolm X and the Civil Rights Movement. And so some of that rubbed off on, and then Bewitched, like anything is possible, we can do it. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Right. It's all those shows.
Now,
movements.
So, I watch Bewitched every single day. I don't know why I ended up watching that show, but
yeah.
Now, Kesha, tell me, how much, do you have any sense of maybe how much of your mom's influence just sort of rubbed off on you, just by osmosis? Do you have any kind of sense of that, or?
I guess a good part of it, definitely, because of the places that I'd be brought along to, and the environments that I was in. I guess a fair amount of it does come from that.
Right.
But her passion is her passion. And that was one thing I was really careful not to step into, is to let her cultivate her own interests. So she went through the gamut of, I want to be a ballerina. Okay, let's get ballet shoes. And I want a piano lessons. Okay. And, I want a guitar, blah, blah, blah. And then when it came to, I want a camera, I said, oh, that's nice. Go. Because, again, if you're serious, you'll find a way to make it happen. And so I said, you have a sugar scrub product you sell, you make money, you have, an opportunity to raise funds for your own camera. Because I knew if she invested in her own camera, it wouldn't be a thing that was, here today, gone tomorrow, and, one of these interests that just quickly faded. And so that was the best decision I actually made. That's why she's here today doing what she's doing, because she actually had to invest in it and commit to it herself.
Yeah, I love it. I do love how you have supported, nonetheless, all the different things that she was exploring as she was growing up. And Kesha, I love how you have come to this point now. Who knows what the future is going to hold, but you've come to this point now where you were marrying two of your passions with, being behind the camera and societal issues, which is fantastic. Let's talk a little bit. I think that's a nice segue into your documentary film, The Sunrise Storyteller. Can you give me a brief summary and how you came up with the concept of it?
Sure. So basically, when we traveled abroad for that 6 months, my goal was to find stories of people who have overcome adversities in their lives, whether it's a personal struggle or an issue that's facing their community or even our world as a whole. So I found stories that range from issues of education to HIV/AIDS, environmental sustainability, human trafficking, all with the purpose of showing people that if there are people in communities that we typically see as impoverished or under-resourced or just generally lacking things, I guess you could say resources in general, and they still manage to shift their reality and shift what they're going through and turn it into something that's positive and contributes positively to the world, then what's stopping us here? I mean, as somebody from the Western world, I do want to expose people here to that kind of idea, more so, especially since I think my main inspiration, aside from the Gender Equality Conference, was the fact that the media is very sensational right now, sensationalized, so that everything that we see about the rest of the world is really negative and really just disempowering in general. Mm-hmm. And we're only hearing one side to the story, that people are starving, dying, killing each other, but we don't hear anything else about it. We don't hear that these people are human, that they feel the same emotions we do, that they face the same struggles that we do, just in a different sense. I don't know. I really wanted to inspire people by seeing these positive sides to the stories that we're seeing on the news.
I love it. Now, tell me what does it mean to be a global citizen?
To me, global citizenship is just a way to say that you care about the rest of the world and that you see yourself as part of a bigger community. And when you see yourselves not only as a part of your immediate community in your own country, in your own city even, if you see yourself as as somebody who lives in the global community, you'll do your best to take care of that community as a whole and see that your actions have an impact not just on the areas that are directly around you, but on the rest of the world.
Yep, absolutely. Tell me about where you guys went to shoot this film. Like, what locations did you travel to, and why did you choose those particular locations?
So when we traveled, we went to South Africa, Mozambique, Tanzania, Thailand. We went to China for a day on a layover to San Francisco. So the main reason when I was looking to do the project that we chose African and Asian countries is because of the way that they're covered on the media. I mean, I'm sure everybody knows the rhetoric of seeing Africa as just completely poor and seeing, like Thailand as the place for trafficking or like sex tourism and that kind of thing. Like, there are a bunch of stereotypes about those communities. Also, I wasn't too familiar with them myself, because I'd only been seeing what was online or in the media. So I really wanted to see for myself what it was like and try to give the most accurate representation of those communities through my film work.
Right. Now, as I was reading up on your film, it says that you had no clear itinerary or roadmap when you set out to make it.
Yeah.
Is that correct? I mean, you had...
we were correct.
Okay, so you had...
We had a start point and we had an end point, but we had no in between. So that was all like kind of figured out while we were traveling.
Okay. As a very anal retentive person and parent myself, I don't know if I could ever be like that flexible in a trip. Personally, I need a little bit more structure to work from, but that's just me. Tell me about that. Tell me a little bit more about how you guys actually navigated from place to place.
Yeah. Well, the way we did it,
we surfed on serendipity.
I guess you could say that. A lot of the connections we made were through people that we met on the road or hostels that had ties to the local community because they had projects there. Or honestly, we weren't go all the time because, I mean, in 6 months we visited four or five countries. So we did live in each place for a fair amount of time to figure out our next steps. So it's not like we're here 1 week. Okay, where are we going next week? So there was that space to breathe and really explore the communities we were in while also just kind of beginning to think about where we would go next. Anything you have to say?
Yeah, and to add to that is if we were moving on to another country or another city, we'd throw the emails out to a bunch of organizations, to contacts, and and see what was coming up in the news, and we'd get in touch a couple of weeks in advance. But the week before traveling, moving on was always a little bit chaotic,
Right.
But our was we find the first night, and then the rest of the nights will follow. So as long as we had a roof over our heads for the first night after traveling, wherever that may be, then everything else would be fine because we would get the lay of the land.
So was it the case where you would land in a place and then start to do a little bit more digging and research and seeing if you can find these stories that you were in search of?
Yes, after coffee.
Yeah.
Okay. Wow.
Anything's possible after coffee.
Right. I'm with you there. Okay. That's just pretty incredible. Now, talk to me about some of the things that you saw while you guys were on the move. I mean, that's like, I don't know if you can.
Oh, yeah, we saw a couple of interesting.
Yeah, tell me about some of those moments that had significant impacts on both of you.
Start.
Okay, so yeah, we saw the amount we saw the amount of barbed wire, that still exists, and the wrought iron gates, and there is still a certain amount of separation, right? So that was visible
In South Africa.
But then we also saw the flip side, the amount of community and cooperation and collaboration. So everywhere we went, there was this split between, where your brain wanted to go one way, but then it was pulling you in the other side, so that you would, so that you'd get that balanced perspective. As Kasia said, she wanted a true representation. We saw money changing hands. We were out, we were asked for outward bribes by police, to get through. We were stopped for fake infractions, on the way to the airport. We saw sex trafficking in Thailand, right in front of our faces. Border smuggling. What else, Kasia? Those were, some of the not so nice points.
But those are those are things that I think shocked us culturally. Mm-hmm. But then, as well, on the flip side of that, challenging stereotypes. So I personally didn't understand that the problem was there's such a division of wealth in African countries. We were in this surfer town for tourists, and it was all nice houses and fancy stores, and then on the other side of the hill, you see the townships which are informal settlements, homes made of tin and cardboard shacks.
Pretty squalid,
But at the same time, it just to see a lot of happiness. And I know it does sound cliche sometimes to say that even when people are impoverished, they are happy, but it's cliche because it's true. When I was I was filming a school for a month, and they were some of the most enthusiastic kids I'd ever seen in my life towards their education and just interacting with each other. It was really heartwarming to see that motivation that they had and that drive towards their education. And that was something that really inspired me, especially because you come home and it's not uncommon to hear people complain all the time. It's right. Complain about the TTs, you complain about the transit, you complain about your homework, you complain about your teachers and the weather even. It's just, I don't know, I think that we need more gratitude in our lives.
The beautiful thing that we witnessed was connection and community, and people who really cared about one another. So, and there was that feeling. You walk down the street, you feel really connected to people, whereas in North America, you have to put an extra effort in, right? People are busy and they stick to their own silos, and even neighbors don't know each other. Living on our street, how many of our neighbors actually know or talk to each other? They're inside their homes half the year with the cold weather. You might see them on a nice day in the spring, but so it was rich with life. I think that was the thing, that it was kind of teeming with life of every which way, the traffic, the the food preparation, the culture. It was amazing to be immersed in something so different from being here in Toronto.
But also very similar in some ways.
Mm-hmm.
Like, definitely. Just with people and the way that they are, I think like places and cultures are different, but humanity is the same.
Exactly.
Mm-hmm.
Find that humanness in each other instead of alienating one another.
That's great. Kasia, you mentioned, gratitude. And I'm a big believer in that as well. I feel like if we all had a little bit more just gratitude for the things that we do have and less complaining about the things that we can't control or the things that we don't have or whatever, the world would be a much better place. But to find that perspective, I think, is tough for a lot of people. Mm-hmm. And one thing that I feel like, and I don't have any hard data to back it up or whatever, but one element that sort of a common denominator that I feel like a lot of people that do have gratitude have is travel. To be able to experience things outside of your own world, outside of your own country, internationally, really seems to have that kind of impact in providing that sort of perspective as part of this, giant global, human world that we all live on. Would you agree with that? Did you guys have, any sort of feeling of a change once you guys came back?
Definitely. And it is, travel is a privilege, and it's not something a lot of people get to experience. Mm-hmm. And just to come back home and be shocked by our own culture and by things that we see as outsiders almost again. Like, it's like relearning culture and learning about the things that we thought were normal before. Or it was eye-opening, even more so in some ways, to come home.
Mm-hmm.
Yep. And Marla, you would agree?
Yeah. And that's a great point, that not everyone has this opportunity. In fact, most don't. This one was not, one that we had we not, done the fundraising. So it took a lot of work. So we were very grateful for the community that supported. So this project is really the reflection of whole world community coming together to support this notion, of community. So we've got, as you know, there's the various tribes of community, or gather, and it's a loosely knit word, right? So it could be anything, right? But when the community came together for us in this particular way, it actually deepened the gratitude and the motivation to give back to this project. And it's really been what has sustained, because it takes an enormous amount. I mean, Kasia's had to juggle this plus high school, enormous amount of work, and do it, 15-hour days, pretty much, for the first 2 years. Mm-hmm. And so I would have said that if we had gone out to do it completely on our own, it may have crashed and burned, because we would have given up, because things wouldn't, come together. But community came together to support this, which was the most incredible part of the story, right? This is really the template for saying this is what can be achieved when people do come together in a collaborative way, and they are inspired because of what you're doing, right? And I would love this, to grow in many different communities. Like, this is the kind of way forward, right? This coming together rather than the separation. of people. So if we're to come together as human beings, right, then we can find things like this to do together. We don't have to be there out there as lone wolves, right?
That's right. So speaking of, I noticed that you have several mentors listed on your website. Can you tell me a little bit about, you don't have to go into detail about each one. You have a lot listed there, but can you tell me a little bit about just the role of mentors in your life? How important are these people? How important would you say the role of having mentors in your life if you're talking to other kids? How important is that, in your opinion?
I think mentors are very important, whether they're peer mentors or mentors who are older than you. It's always really amazing to learn from somebody, whether it's personal experience or skills. Just working with somebody is really enlightening, and it's also, I think it's empowered me a lot to be fearless in trying new things and fearless in learning new things. And it's been really helpful to have supportive mentors on the project, like my editing mentor, Troy, helped me finish the film, and my other mentors as well, have been able to pass down really important tips and skills. So I've really enjoyed the process.
And as Kasia becomes, more mature in her own skill development and is able to transfer those and mentor. Actually, she has been asked to mentor someone younger than herself. So, she'll have that within her as a tool for leadership, that it's only as good as how you pass the torch. Right? Yep. And that has always been, I've always had mentors in my life as well as a young entrepreneur. And I remember my very first mentor who told me that he was going to come on to my project way back when, was that he would do so with the agreement that one day I would also mentor. And so it's like a closed circuit network, that if done well, can really empower the next generation.
Right. Pay it forward.
Yeah, definitely.
Well, that's awesome. Okay.
Oh, you have an announcement about a mentor coming soon.
Oh, but no.
Yeah, and speaking of mentors, Kasia was just accepted into the 3 Dash Foundation, the We Are Family Foundation, who run the 3 Dash program, as one of 30 global leaders, and she'll be assigned a mentor in March or April.
Wow. Very cool. Well, speaking of, you having this new mentor coming in March or April, I know you just finished high school. Congratulations. And that you are now taking a gap year. Is that correct?
Yeah.
Okay, cool. Can you tell me, do you have any solid plans or ideas for your gap year? And is college definitely in your future plans?
Well, right now the gap year is focused on travel and the project and the film. So developing the project to be a little bit, to take it to the next level, to incorporate a way to have a community model of some kind where people can contribute instead of just reading the stories or hearing about the stories that I'm sharing. So we're working to clarify that right now, over that year and a half. And then I think that university is in my books. I'd like to go to university locally, but that could always change. We'll see how things develop throughout the year. But yeah, no, that's definitely what the solid plan is, even though it's not so solid. But that's what's in the books for me.
Gotcha.
Yes, full gap. She, we call her 6-month travels abroad, her half gap, pre-gap, because it was the half gap year before her gap year, so half gap, pre-gap. And this gap year was after much debate, and she decided, she's going to travel with the film and see where the mentorship with 3 Dash takes her as well.
Yeah, very cool. Now, can you tell me a little bit? I know we're getting close to the hour mark, so I want to start to head towards wrapping it up, but I don't want to take up too much of your time. Tell me about some big milestones you have coming up with the film.
Oh, well, I'm having my world premiere down at the United Nations conference that I was first inspired to make the film at, and that's going to be taking place in March. I've submitted to some film festivals, and we're still waiting on acceptances, so hopefully that will be another milestone for the film.
Right. One of them is Gina Davis's film festival.
In Bentonville, I think.
Yeah, it's in Bentonville. And UN Women has a film festival. Toronto has one. We're just, it's application days right now, just sending them out. Yeah. There's so many of them.
Right.
And then Kasia has a big exhibition in Vimy Ridge in France in April on the topic of peace. It's the Sustainable Development Goal number 16. And so that is going to be in honor of 100th anniversary of Vimy Ridge. And there'll be about 30,000 educators and students down there for this. So it's a big one.
Incredible. Okay, let me ask both of you one final question. It's the last question I ask of everybody that I interview. As I said before, I advocate for parents to raise rebels, and the way I define rebels are people who live authentically and pursue their passions with courage to live an extraordinary life, as opposed to just simply going through the system and living a life that basically someone else wants you to live or believes that you should live. What advice could each of you give to people to become successful rebels in life?
I think my main advice to anybody, especially, is just to find that passion first. And no matter what it is, just dare to follow it. Step outside your box a little bit. And I think that as long as you have that passion, you'll have a driving force to make your life great. And it won't matter what anybody else will say, because you know what you love to do. And that's just the most important thing to me.
Mm-hmm. And I would say, don't go with the status quo. There's, dare to step out of the box and really look for other ways, because there's always other ways to do something. And if you're authentic to your own truth and there's a higher purpose of, to what you're doing, and you're not harming anyone with what you're doing, then, find a way to do your good in the world, and don't take any flack from the system or friends or from, anyone, outsiders. Don't listen to the media. Don't, just carve your own way and look for those opportunities. And also, as you're advocating for yourself, it's an opportunity to educate, right? And so, especially, and I'm very, very passionate about this in the education system, where, we take raw material and try and crush it into this kind of molds. And it's like, I used to, and this is just a quick story, but this was a mom's story. When I introduced Kasia into the public school system, the very, parent-teacher interviews, I would say, I don't care what you teach my daughter, I care how you teach her. If you connect with her emotionally and inspire her through your passion, she'll be ignited, right? And if there's that kind of mutual respect, like, what? You're talking down to a kid here, what? But I did this with every teacher from kindergarten right up through the end of high school. Tell me how you're teaching my daughter, what are you doing to inspire? Keep that passion alive. So, again, as I'm advocating for my child, I'm also doing it with heart. So I educare, I like the phrase educare a child versus educate. Because if you have that passion in the heart to learn, it's all home free. They'll find their way.
Sounds so simple, doesn't it? Awesome. Awesome advice from both of you. Thank you very much. So where can people go online to find more information about you guys, about your film? Kasia.
Well, our website, the Global Sunrise Project, or Twitter at Global Sunrisers, and it's the same for Instagram. We're pretty active on social media.
Okay, gotcha. I will definitely be providing links to those in the show notes for your episode. Kasia Slavner is a filmmaker, photographer, author, social entrepreneur, and young global leader. Her upcoming film, The Sunrise Storyteller, is a documentary about what it means to be a global citizen. Kasia and Marla, thank you both very much for taking the time today to chat. Kasia, you're such an impressive young woman. Thank you so much for your work, for being such a positive role model and example for people and kids. And Marla, to you as well. Thank you for being such a wonderful role model for parents and for women. I'm very grateful for you guys taking the time today. Thank you both very much.
Thanks you
so
Paul.
much for having us.
Yeah, and thanks for holding a space for parents to do this.
Oh, absolutely. It's my pleasure. That's my passion. All right. Well, I wish you best of luck with everything. And please, let me know if there's anything I can do to help you continue to promote your film and to promote your good word. I'm up for anything. So let me know.
Fantastic.
Thanks so much.
Okay.
Take care.
All right. Talk to you later. By sharing these stories, my hope is that it provides you with information, motivation, and perhaps justification for your family's journey to raise your kids to take ownership in their future and to be courageous in living the lives that they want to live. The show notes for today's episode are over at raisingrebellion.com, and if you know any rebels that you think would be a great guest for the show, definitely let me know. I'm very grateful for you being here as always, and until next time, go Rebs.